Deku? I think he's some pro. By clouds. My head in the clouds not coming down. Chapter 70. Idiots. Okay, so I get the whole you gotta multiply before you add and stuff, but I'm still a little confused about what to do with the parentheses. Kirishima's hair was down today, and he was tugging on it with one hand as the other drummed a pencil against the table of the diner. Katsuki had to keep forcing himself to look away so he could concentrate on studying, rather than be distracted just because the idiot decided to be lazy on a Saturday and not gel up his hair. You need to do the parentheses first, dumbass. Otherwise you'll get the answer wrong. Like this? Kirishima's face scrunched up in concentration as he solved the practice problem, and Katsuki had to look down at the paper quickly to avoid getting caught staring when Kirishima glanced up at him as he finished the problem. Is that right? Katsuki mentally went through the problem looking for mistakes. Exactly like that. Now why didn't you do that the first time? The stupid, distracting idiot smiled brightly, and Katsuki's stomach flopped. Something that was becoming more and more common lately. Pikachu and Raccoon Eyes insisted it was a crush, but they had to be wrong. Crushes implied that a relationship like that could ever possibly happen, and Katsuki wasn't going to drag his friend down like that, no matter how dumb and distracting he was. Oh, don't be like that. Kirishima's laugh echoed loudly around the restaurant. Aren't you going to at least give me a reward for solving the problem right? Are you serious right now? Katsuki glared at him. What would I even give you? A French fry? Kirishima tapped his chin thoughtfully. I was thinking more like a kiss. Katsuki shoved him and ducked his head as he felt his face heat up. He felt like everyone was staring at them, but maybe that was just because Kirishima was just so loud. I told you this wasn't a date, idiot. Kirishima simply laughed again, then stopped. Man, are you blushing right now? Maybe I'm just enraged because you're so stupid and keep getting easy problems wrong. You ever thought of that? Katsuki denied. You better do the next problem right before I explode on you. But I got the last problem right, Kirishima pointed out cheekily. Shut up, shitty hair. Math was their last subject before they called it a day. But despite what Katsuki said, Kirishima was actually improving, and would probably do pretty well in the finals next week. Which was good, because if he had to go to the training camp with only the other idiot extras for company, he was going to be pissed. He just needed to make sure the idiot passed. Bakugo! Kirishima! I didn't know you frequented this establishment! The loud voice made them both turn around, to see Four Eyes striding towards them. As soon as he saw him, Kirishima smiled again, and waved Ida over. Hey man! It feels like it's been forever! We were all super bummed when Aizawa told us you got suspended over the whole stain thing. Yes, well... Ida pushed his glasses up his nose. The punishment is well deserved, and I'm taking steps to be able to rejoin you as soon as possible. That's awesome, Kirishima said supportively. What'd you have to do before they let you back in? I have to write an essay on vigilantism laws and show improvement in therapy, Ida said. Oh, yes, Bakugo. I meant to ask, how did your visit with Hound Dog go? Katsuki froze. I have a go-to order for Ida, the waitress behind the counter yelled. Order for Ida! Oh, that's mine, Ida said. Sorry I can't stay and chat for long. I promised Tensei I'd bring him something that wasn't hospital food. A heavy silence fell between him and Kirishima as Ida hurried to grab his food from the counter and left. Of course, leave it up to Four Eyes to fuck everything up. He kind of just assumed there was some sort of silent agreement between them after they'd run into each other to never mention it again, but apparently not. He thought it was just common sense not to talk about who you saw going out of therapy, but either he missed something or Ida was an idiot. The second one was a lot more likely, and a lot more likely to get someone punched in the face. Finally, Kirishima broke the silence. I didn't know you were seeing Hound Dog. Is that where you go during the times you don't hang out with us? Drop it, Katsuki growled. He wanted to disappear. It was only a matter of time before Kirishima told the other extras he was weak, and then they'd stop inviting him to hang out after all. Stupid Four Eyes. Stupid therapy. Kirishima shrugged, acting for all the world like he was talking about the weather or something like that. You could have told us, man. We would have stopped pestering you so much to hang out with us. Katsuki's heart sank at the confirmation that Kirishima didn't want to be friends anymore. Bearing his... was this disappointment? Whatever shitty emotion it was, Katsuki buried it under another layer of anger as he started to gather his things. Whoa, dude! Where are you going? Kirishima looked flustered. We still haven't finished studying for math yet. I thought you weren't interested in hanging out with someone who had to go to fucking therapy, Katsuki accused, slinging his bag over his shoulder and standing to leave. Figured I'd save you the trouble of pestering me or some shit. What? Kirishima's eyes widened after a split second, and he grabbed Katsuki's wrist before he could take more than a few steps away. Dude, that's not what I meant at all. Yeah? And what did you mean? Katsuki turned on him. I know I don't deserve to be your friend, so I'll just fuck off and stop dragging it out. You can go study with the other extras if you're so concerned about finals. Bakugo, wait! Kirishima stood hurriedly and stood in his way so he couldn't leave. You've got it all wrong. I'm not going to stop hanging out with you for something like that. I'd never do that. So what? Katsuki glared at him. You're just going to act like you're not judging me for having to go talk to the mutt every week. You're right. Is that what you think? Kirishima ran a hand through his stupid, shitty hair. Baku, bro. It's not like that at all. I think it'd be pretty hypocritical of me to judge you anyway, considering I've got a therapist too. Katsuki blue-screened. What? Kirishima chuckled. I've been going to therapy since middle school, so trust me when I say it's super manly. Now, can we sit back down? People are starting to stare. Katsuki huffed and ignored the way his face turned red as he slouched back to their table and slumped down in his seat. Kirishima awkwardly slid into the seat opposite him, and there was a long moment of silence before he cleared his throat. So, you're literally the walking embodiment of fucking sunshine, Katsuki interrupted. Why the hell would you ever have to go to therapy? Or are you just lying to make me feel better or some shit? Kirishima sighed. I wouldn't do that, man. Besides the fact that lying just isn't manly, I care about you too much for that. Bakugo, I've got depression. Katsuki did a double take. But I act so happy all the time? Kirishima shrugged. A combination of good coping skills and fake it till you make it. It's got a lot better, mostly because of therapy and other stuff, but it got pretty bad back in middle school. I didn't really have, I didn't have friends back then, you know? Katsuki looked at him suspiciously. I thought you went to the same school as Raccoon Eyes. I did. Kirishima nodded. But we weren't really friends until, halfway through our 3rd year. I thought she was cool, sure, but I was too shy to reach out. Katsuki leveled him with a look. You? Shy? You really expect me to believe that? Katsuki laughed. You don't have to believe me, but it's true. I kinda had a realization, though, that I didn't want to keep going like that and thought, well, what's holding me back from changing? So, I remade myself. My parents were pretty shocked when I came out of the bathroom with bright red hair, I'll tell you that. Katsuki couldn't help chuckling, as he envisioned Kirishima's parents calling him down to dinner and seeing a completely different kid. Dyeing your hair doesn't count as therapy, dumbass. Maybe not, but have you really been a teenager if you haven't impulsively dyed your hair in the middle of a mental breakdown? Kirishima said cheekily. No, my parents offered me to start therapy after I told them why I dyed my hair, and I haven't looked back ever since. The whole hair color thing and making a resolution to be bold and cheerful worked for the first few days, but honestly, I probably wouldn't have been able to keep it up if I haven't ever started talking to someone about it. I still have days where my smile is mostly fake, but what you gonna do? Katsuki blinked a few times. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Kirishima shook his head. It's not something I talk about a lot, but going to therapy doesn't make you weak or a wimp or whatever you're thinking. That's the one thing my therapist was very clear on from the get-go. And she's pretty much always honest, so I think you'd probably like her. Katsuki couldn't imagine any therapist other than Hound Dog. What's she like? Cece's fun. She's always brutally honest because of her quirk, so... Kirishima stopped to think for a moment and grimaced. Actually, I'm not sure if you'd love her or hate her. Katsuki raised an eyebrow. Why? Well, Kirishima chuckled awkwardly. Imagine if Sue was an alcoholic, and that's pretty much Cece. You two would either get along like a house on fire, or you'd set the house on fire. It's probably best if we never find out. Bakugo scoffed. I don't want to meet your stupid therapist, shitty hair. Just saying. Kirishima gave him one of those stupid, bright smiles, and Katsuki felt his stomach flip again. I'm proud of you. It takes a lot of determination to admit that you need to get better, and actually take steps towards it. I think you're really strong, Bakugo. It's one of the things I admire most about you. It was then that Katsuki did something impulsive, as he reached out and grabbed Kirishima by the front of the shirt. He let out a small squeak, and his eyes widened, and Katsuki dragged him partway across the table and kissed him, before he could think better of it. Katsuki's brain kept screaming at him to stop, that he'd regret it and he didn't deserve it. But, like Kirishima had said, could he really say he'd been a teenager if he didn't do impulsive things once in a while? After a few seconds, though, Katsuki realized that his brain kind of did have a point, and let go of Kirishima like he'd been burned. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Before he could probably apologize for randomly kissing his best friend, however, Kirishima smiled and pulled them back together for another kiss. Don't you dare apologize, Baku boyfriend. Totally not manly. They were interrupted by their waitress coming over. Well, I totally owe the cooks money now. I thought for sure the redhead would make the first move. Kirishima turned almost as red as his hair, What? You were betting on us? Are you kidding? This is the most entertaining thing that's happened all day. She grinned and put a giant milkshake down on the table. On the house. Congratulations. Kirishima smiled shyly and rubbed the back of his neck. We're not finishing math today, are we? Chapter 71. Stress. Toshinori was in trouble. He could tell just by the way that Aizawa glared at him as he passed him by in the hall on his way to Principal Nezu's office. But he was the symbol of peace. He refused to shrink back just because Aizawa's glare was terrifying. He also refused to let his knees tremble like some nervous middle schooler as he walked. Sure, it wasn't a good sign that he'd come back from Gran Torino's cabin to a voicemail from Nezu requesting he come see him before resuming classes, but he wasn't a child anymore. He was a teacher, and therefore shouldn't be afraid of being called into the principal's office. Right? Nezu opened the door right as he was about to knock, which was as startling as it normally was, but not abnormal behavior for the principal. But something about his smile gave Toshinori chills. Ah, All Might. Please come in. Of course. Toshinori stepped aside and closed the door behind him. Principal Nezu, sir. Would you like some tea? Nezu interrupted, already pouring 2 cups before Toshinori had a chance to respond. How was your visit with Gran Torino? Toshinori sighed and accepted the tea. It gave me a lot to think about. That was the honest truth of it, wasn't it? He wanted to protect Deku from the dangers of heroism, but at the end of the day, what was that? Gran might not have been the nicest about it, but he had a point when he said that Toshinori might simply be projecting onto the poor boy. He was the #1 hero. If things had happened differently, and he had never met Nana, would he have been able to push through like young Midoriya had? Would he have been able to overcome the limitations and obstacles that faced the quirkless, not only in an industry that wasn't designed for them, but also in the world at large? Unfortunately, Toshinori had to admit to himself that no, he would never have been able to do what Deku was doing. It was frightening and humbling to admit, but while he still had doubts that it was even possible, he was having to slowly sort through his feelings and realize that, in addition to fear and concern, when he thought of Midoriya actually becoming a quirkless hero, he also felt at least a smidge of jealousy. He didn't exactly know what to do about that. Toshinori shook his head and took a sip of his tea. If you don't mind my asking, sir, why did you want to talk to me? Ah, of course. Nezu smiled and clapped his paws together. Deku knows about One for All. Toshinori choked on his tea. He figured it out months ago, apparently. Nezu continued, unfazed. I'm not surprised. In fact, I half expected it, but it is still quite the accomplishment. There was a bit of a situation while you were gone, on the account of the fact that young Torgata started to develop the quirks of past holders. But we've made a plan to use forward in the coming weeks that you'll need to approve. But we don't expect any other surprises. Toshinori had thought his health problems were mostly in his intestines, not his ears, but apparently not. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Nezu grinned. Torgata manifested the quirk of one of the past holders while you were gone. How? Toshinori abandoned his tea. There wouldn't be much of a point to drinking it if this conversation was going to keep going the way it had been. One for All is a strength stockpiling quirk. It makes the user stronger, and neither Nana or I ever developed other quirks. She would have told me if something like that were possible. Are you sure? Nezu shrugged. Take a look for yourself. He flipped the screen on his computer around and played a short video, which seemed to be taken in one of the testing rooms that the support course normally used for experiments. Torgata was standing front and center and attempting to knock a soda can over using thick black strings that were glowing from his hands. He wasn't successful, but his control of the strings seemed to improve the more he kept the new quirk activated. Oh. The new quirk is called Black Whip, Nezu informed him. He slid a 3-ring binder across the table for Toshinori to look at. This is all the information that Deku was able to compile on the past holders. I would advise studying it thoroughly, as we have no way of predicting when or if Torgata will develop each of these quirks. I have my own copy, as do Torgata, Aizawa, and Midoriya, obviously. Toshinori was glad he'd set aside his tea, because this time the only thing he choked on was blood. Aizawa knows. Well, that explained the glare he'd gotten that morning. Perhaps he should have told the man earlier, but it was supposed to be a secret, and Toshinori had thought he'd had it handled. After decades of having this quirk, he should have been an expert on it, but apparently he'd been slacking in his duty towards Torgata. He wasn't looking forward to the staff meeting. Torgata manifested Black Whip in the middle of a lesson that Aizawa was assisting with, Nezu said matter-of-factly. Both he and Torgata assumed it was a villain attack at first. Thankfully, both Deku and I recognized what was happening, and we were able to resolve the situation quickly. But Aizawa refused to leave without an explanation, so we decided his assistance would be valuable, especially since these new quirks seem to be difficult to control when they first manifest. That makes sense. Toshinori took a deep breath and decided to deal with that later. Is that everything? Nezu's eyes twinkled, and Toshinori felt his stomach sink. Actually, there is the matter of the final exams. Okay, what's going on? Izuku looked up from his English notes to see Shinso standing on the other side of the table, looking even more tired than usual. I'm studying for finals? Ha ha. Shinso deadpanned, and pulled up a chair. No, I'm talking about Dad Zawa. He's been more pissed than usual the last few days, and I already asked Joke, who also doesn't know what's going on. You're practically his kid, so what's up with him? Izuku couldn't exactly tell him that Aizawa was mad because All Might passed on a super secret and super dangerous quirk onto one of the third years without properly informing him of the risks and helping him control it. Wait, does he know that you call him Dad Zawa? Don't change the subject, Midoriya, Shinso said. What happened? Izuku sighed. Can I just say he's pissed off at All Might and leave it at that? Shinso thought about it for a moment. Actually, yeah, that checks out. He's always complaining about the big blonde oaf. What'd he do? Something stupid, Izuku shrugged. So, nothing too out of the ordinary. Cool. Shinso was quiet for a moment. So, should we prank him? Who, All Might? Izuku chuckled. Or Eraser? Shinso shrugged. Either. But I was thinking Aizawa. What better way to distract him from whatever is annoying him than annoying him even more? Izuku stared at him. I really don't think introducing you to Miss Joke was a good idea. Too late. Shinso smirked. So? Izuku tried not to give in. He really did, but he probably needed a distraction at this point as well. In fact, the whole class kind of did. Their finals started tomorrow, and everyone was stressed and overworked, especially with the threat of not being able to go to the summer camp looming over their heads. Izuku felt a small smile make its way onto his face. Yeah, they could all use a bit of a distraction. Izuku shut his English notes and stood up. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna need some help. Shinso grinned. I'm in. Izuku shook his head and led the way into the living room, where the girls were studying for math. Yaomomo, can we talk to you for a minute? Yaomomo looked up, slightly startled, but it only took her a moment to snap into class rep mode. Of course. Follow me. She ignored the curious looks from the rest of the girls and silently led them to her room. Once they were alone, she shut the door and turned to them, a worried look on her face. What is it? Are you two having problems adjusting to the dorms? Is someone hurt? It's nothing like that. Don't worry. Izuku waved his hands frantically in front of him to dismiss her worries. We need your help. You can make anything with your quirk, right? As long as it's not alive? Yaomomo blushed slightly. Yes, I can. Izuku glanced at Shinso and gave a mischievous smile. So, if I were to give you a pattern, could you make clothes with them? Quite easily, yes. Yaomomo nodded. What did you have in mind? Alright, class. It's time for lights out. Shota trailed off as he took in the scene. The entire class was watching a movie. Some of them were on the couch or sprawled on the floor, or even on each other. Bakugo was even there, lying partially on top of Kirishima, which Shota would have been almost proud of, if it wasn't for what his problem children were wearing. Every single member of Class 1A was wearing an identical pair of kitten pajamas. They'd each styled them differently, of course, in a way that showed their personality. For example, Kirishima had ditched the matching set and paired it with a tank top, while Yaoyorozu was wearing the two-piece set exactly like it would be advertised in a retail magazine, and Uraraga had managed to get her hands on a matching headband with the same print. Shota immediately rounded on Deku, who was looking at him with a shit-eating grin, which only emphasized the fact that he was wearing the pajamas of his own. I trusted you. Oh, come on, Dadzawa, don't be like that, Shinso interrupted, standing up and striking a pose. Don't you like him? Yaomomo made you a pair too. Kaminori gave him a thumbs up. Go get dressed, Mini yelled. It's picture time! Shota sighed, but had no choice but to take the offered bundle of clothes that Yaoyorozu was holding out to him. What was he gonna do with these kids? I hate all of you,